Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. We are happy to have you back for another round of Voices of Resilience. Like I said, it's Thursday. Our times changed, but we're always here on Thursdays. Just got to find us. It's like a good scavenger hunt where you already know what you're looking for. Just got to look at the right time. So I'm excited to have you here. My name is Nathan Hofer. I am the director of campus operations for Lost and Found. If you don't know who Lost and Found is or what we're about, we are an organization that focuses on building preventative mental health and resilience in young adults. So we focus on developing resilience because, gosh, we all need to be a little bit more resilient these days with everything that's happening. And young adulthood, especially, is full of transitions and difficulties. And so we really focus on creating communities, networks of support, and providing deep down individualized skill training where people can lean back on when they have when life throws them the inevitable curveball. I mean, we're in one, I say it every week and I'm tired of saying it and you're probably tired of hearing it, but we're in one long long bit of unknown with this global pandemic, and resiliency has been incredibly important for all of us. So we get to spend some time every week doing these Voices of Resilience series with people in our community, whether they are in our in our actual community or in our general community. And today I am so excited to have Lucas on the show. We kind of met through a mutual friend. I'm gonna give a shout out to Sarah Tashin and the Nicole J. Phillips Kindness Crew team, because they keep giving me great people. And Lucas is here, and Sarah's here. Yes, hi Sarah. Yes, hello Sarah. And on that note, I'm gonna bring Lucas into the party here. And I'm just so excited to have you, Lucas. You're from Wisconsin. You focus on a lot of stuff, and I think I still muted you. I'm so sorry. And you have to unmute yourself, buddy. It's good to see your mouth move, but there we go. You're unmuted. I got you. Oh, look.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Nicole.
Oh, goodness. So, Lucas, tell us a little bit more about what you do and your background. I think it's fascinating. We've had a lot of good talks, and we've only known each other virtually, and we've only known each other for a little while. But I feel like we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways, and you doing much more incredible stuff than I probably ever will, and I'm cool with
that. No, we're in this together, obviously. I too. I feel like we've known each other for years, and we have a lot of common interests, I think, and common motives in life. I'm super excited, and thank you for this opportunity. First off, any time that I get to dish out a little bit of my experiences and knowledge, if you will, into a community that can benefit from it and utilize it and take it and run with it, really gets me excited. So this is a really cool opportunity. My name is Lucas Koenecke. I am born and raised in Wisconsin, have lived in some other places for short periods of time, but I live here in a small town, Evansville, with my wife and two kids, just south of Madison, and I own Inside Out Intelligent Training, where we work with primarily individuals on things that they're interested in life, and ultimately what they're looking for is they're looking for happiness. They're looking for what we talk about a lot with movement confidence. They want to feel better. And, I think we can all kind of relate to that, right? They either want to feel better in terms of they want to get rid of a pain that's in their hip or their back or their neck, or they want to feel like they have more motivation and are more clear-headed. They want to feel more a sense of happiness and joy, as opposed to sadness and, or anger or defeat. So I get to work with all sorts of walks of life and people that move in different ways and, live in different ways. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I will say, apparently you are the foot healer for Nicole. So that's important. And as you can see, for anyone watching right now, we are very much engaging with our chat. So if you have questions for Lucas or comments, I will be moderating them. So if they're inappropriate, Nicole, Sarah, I'll put them on the screen. But we want to, if you have stuff that you want to ask Lucas as we go in here, please throw those questions out, because we want to hear from you, because people are sick of hearing from me. and I don't blame them. But if you have questions, like I said, we will get to them, and we want to respond to them well. So, Lucas, I'm pumped. I'm pumped to hear what you're about and what your background is and your passion for getting people to feel well. Because I think of something as silly as I just started running again, which is I'm not a runner. I have a sprinting background, so like 200 meters was like I had to pace myself. It's a long ways, halfway around the track.
It is.
My gosh, it's so far. But like I just like my knee started to hurt the other day, and I got so frustrated. Like I was like I was just so annoyed. I'm like, man, I'm only running a couple miles, 2-3 miles. It's like, why is my knee hurting so badly? And it's very frustrating. So there's something so tied to that wellness component that ties back into like all those other aspects of your life. And I feel like we should, before I ask my question here, we should be aware we're in danger, Lucas.
Take cover.
They're here. They're gonna be hitting our chat. We just gotta be ready.
Right. I feel like we're under attack.
I feel a little bit. I mean, it's good. I think for now. We'll see. I'm watching you two though.
Right. Better put our guard up just a little bit. I know those two.
I know they're dangerous, dangerously kind. It's terrifying. Yes, you are everywhere, Nicole. I see it. Man, who gave Nicole a computer? Sarah, tech support. Get it. Cut it out. But you mentioned it, wellness and well-being, and you kind of talked a little bit about some of those things that you've done. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about what some of those things that you've done to help promote people's wellness and well-being. And then, as another tie into that is like, as I was just talking about, I got frustrated by something as simple as my knee hurting and being annoyed by that. But that affected my state of mental well-being for a time. It was like I was frustrated that I couldn't do the thing I wanted to do. So I'd love to hear from your experience, how you see the physical and mental health worlds interact, because I have my thoughts, and I'll save my opinions for a little later in my comments. But I'd love to hear more of what you do and more about where you see those connections between physical and mental health.
Cool. So a couple things come to my mind. First off, one of the things that I really like to teach people is neurological threat. All right. So first off, it's really important for everybody to understand, at least a little bit, that your brain is part of your nervous system, and it ultimately controls everything about you. All right. So it's the software program that lives in your body that's in charge of your bicep muscle, and it's in charge of your stomach, and it's in charge of your knee, and it's in charge of everything, really. It's like the governing system of the body. And it's always learning, right? So it's always taking in information from the moment we're born and developed, and starting to develop. It's taking in information and it's learning, and then it's always making decisions on what to do about all the inputs coming in, right? So for example, when you're out on the track, you take off and you're running, immediately your brain is trying to take in a whole bunch of information to determine what it should do. Should it keep running? Should it slow down? Right? Is it in danger? It's checking in with like air temperature, the wind. It's checking in with what's around you, what kind of footwear you have on, all these different things. Can your tissues in your knee joint, the connective tissues, do they seem to be handling the impact and the strain that they're under, right? So all these different things are happening in your brain at incredibly fast speeds. And so it has to make a decision, like, are we safe or are we not? And it has all these mechanisms, or like braking mechanisms. So one of the biggest braking mechanisms is pain. So if your brain is not comfortable with the task at hand, right, this decision to go out for a sprint, one of the ways it can slow you down really quickly is to give you knee pain. And you go, well, that's interesting.
Darn it, brain.
Darn it,
cut it
smart
out.
Brain. So sometimes when people, come to me with this type of an issue, and they say, I'd really like to run better. I'd really like to run without knee pain. is we have to kind of dial it back and start looking for where what we call neurological threats are. Where are the threats? So this may involve looking at your ankle. Like, do you have good movement quality in your ankle and good control? Do you have good movement quality and strength around your knee joint? Right, so we'll look through the different joints and different muscles. And then also we're going to look at different things like your visual system and your eyes. Right? Can your eyes take in enough information? Can they understand what they're seeing? And is your brain comfortable? And in a lot of cases, we'll find certain things. So we'll find those threats. And sometimes it might be like, you know what, your knee wasn't really moving that well. You didn't have good control of it. And it wasn't ready for a sprint. Maybe you need to start just with walking or some light jogging and kind of build up that tolerance. So learning about neurological threats is really important because it changes your perspective from thinking that we're like a car that's made up of a bunch of materials all bolted together, right? Versus a software program where everything is integrated and you literally cannot separate things out, right? It's all integrated some way, shape, or form. So pain is an output from the brain saying like, there's a threat here, something's wrong, there's potential for damage. And then other things, some of our, we think of as mental outputs, like anger, sadness, these different types of emotions, they can also just be outputs from the brain, potentially threat responses, right? Where your brain is uncomfortable. It's not sure how to handle the situation. It doesn't feel like it has a good understanding, right? So if you are, I'll use an example of a social environment. If you step into a social environment that your brain's not comfortable in, and maybe you're having a hard time, have you ever been at a party where there's so much noise and there's so much going on visually that it's really uncomfortable? It's hard to have a conversation with somebody. And you can feel like that mentally is really challenging and stressful. So your brain is, again, it's pretty smart and it's trying to deal with the situation. You may have some neurological threat because of that. You may get a instant, start to feel really uncomfortable, feel really sad or lethargic, or even angry about something, crabby, whatever it is. And that might be enough to force you to remove yourself from the social situation, right? Or you may end up acting out in some way, like how kids will act out and be a little irrational with their behaviors and decisions. But that is a huge part of their brain can't actually process what's going on, and it's trying to remove itself from the situation. So digging into that, it really has a lot to do with neurological threats, and then the fact that they're integrated together. So I'll go a little bit more on this mental health and physical health and mind body. I'm going to pull up. Nathan, can you pull up the slide, or do I click on the slide? Yeah, that one.
I got you.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I love to just bring up this diagram, and I'm going to give props here to Z Health Education for providing this slide that we're using. So we think of our brain, we oftentimes think of the brain as the thinking part, right? It's where mental things happen, right? But it's where all physical things happen as well, right? So just basic stuff here. Towards the front of the brain, we have the motor cortex, we have the frontal lobe. That's where all the thinking gets done. That's where we're sitting down and thinking about, what do I want to have for dinner tonight, right? Or what movie should we pick out and watch, right? Or how do I construct this airplane? All that kind of stuff happens up there. It is right next to the motor cortex. So the motor cortex is what makes your finger move, what makes your arm move, what makes you run down the track, right? What makes you jump, what makes you do anything physical, right? So because they live so close together, you really cannot have one without the other. One doesn't really operate without the other. A lot of people can recognize if you're in a bit of a stressful conversation, or you've been talking for a long period of time, like you're having a Zoom meeting, and you get the urge to stand up and walk around. I'm like, I just got to go for a walk, or I'm antsy in my chair. I've just got to move, right? So that is in large part of that area of your brain getting really fatigued. The thinking area of your brain is getting really tired, and it really needs more motor cortex, more movement to continue to function properly. So it's trying to get you to add some movement to your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have all these different things going on in the brain. Looking at the backside of the brain, we have the sensory maps and the parietal lobe. That's everything we feel comes into the brain. We have the occipital lobe. That's where everything visual. So all the different things that we see coming in through our eyes go into the brain. Into the brainstem area. That's the lower part of the brain. That's where your like fight or flight systems live. That's where a huge part of like irrational emotions and irrational decision making happens right there. So that's where, if you've ever known somebody to become hangry, like they're gonna, like if
My
you had,
3-year-old daughter,
if you
hangry.
had a donut in your hand, I would rip your arm off for it.
My daughter has recently discovered that she is. We've recently discovered that she has a hanger.
Mm. Yes. So that is her brainstem, or her bottom part of the brain in action, very much so. So just by looking at all these physical components of your brain, it's pretty obvious to recognize that you really can't separate physical and mental, right? They're very much married together, and they work together. And so that, I think that actually provides hope, because I think if you recognize that and realize that, if you need help, if you're working on, like let's say you're seeing a therapist who's helping you, and I'm just going to say talk therapy, so for people to understand, that can be extremely helpful and useful in so many ways, right? Or having a conversation with a friend or a family member that's maybe helping you through some tough times. Incredibly helpful. But it's also hopeful and useful to think about, how can I tune up the rest of my brain to support this talk therapy that I'm doing? All right, so I'm working on the frontal lobe areas, the decision making, the cognitive thinking part. But how can I get the rest of the system operating a little bit better so that it transfers over into my mental work? So that is the cool part, where we get into working on the sensory areas of the brain, the vision areas of the brain, physical movement stuff that oftentimes expedites the mental work that you're doing. Am I kind of making sense, Nathan?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's fun to see this diagram, I think, because I have a. It's been far too long since I've dug into brain neurology and things. As a former psychology major back in the day, we had to deal with that, and you forget how intimately tied together those things can be, and I think that's really an impactful thing for people to see, for myself to see. I hope it's impactful for others to see
Yeah.
where some of these things, there's that crossover, and why some of those things are pretty naturally tied together. As I was laughing a little bit as you talking about, like, you're in a Zoom meeting and you find yourself having that urge to move, as I'm sitting in this chair rocking back and forth going, whoops.
All right, need to move a little bit. That's one of my biggest suggestions with anybody having a conversation. And if you sense at all that there's some irrational thinking occurring, or there's some tension building up, I say start moving, add some movement. If you're having a conversation with a friend or a family member, or a spouse, for example, go for a walk, and go for a walk together. And you may recognize that the conversation is much more effective if you're walking and talking, versus just sitting and talking. Adding a little bit of basic movement can go a long ways.
That's very true. I've experienced that in my own life. It's been very effective.
Yeah.
And not to like derail the conversation here, but I think this question that came through probably ties in pretty close to what you're talking about here. So I'm going to toss it up here,
Cool.
and then we can go on. But Nicole had asked. She said, Are there things that you should be eating, ways that should be moving each day to begin a path to better mental health?
Nicole, I love that because I love in all seriousness.
After we've been dinking around,
Right,
here I have
right.
a real.
I have a real question here. No kidding. Yes, absolutely. So the simple answer to that is yes. I'll talk a little bit more on the side of movement, right? So Nathan, can you bring up the other picture of the maps?
I think if you click it on your side, it'll
Or
come up.
do I have to do that?
I gave you power.
Ah,
There it
perfect.
is.
Okay.
I'll zoom it in a little bit. Get rid of our faces for a second. Zoom it in on that a little bit.
All right, let's talk about this just a little bit here. This is a concept, all right, that I think everybody can relate to a little bit, especially now that we use GPS systems to navigate around the world. So if you've been in a car and you're going to cross town and you've never been to this location before, it's likely you're going to use a GPS system, right? And let's say you turn on that GPS and it's going to take you to your destination and it tells you every which way to go. All right. Well, what would happen if you're halfway there and all of a sudden your GPS system stops working, right? Because you're not getting good, you don't have good service, right? So GPS system stops working and it gives you just a little bit of information, right? So rather than saying take exit 133, it says take exit, right? Or instead of saying turn left on Highway 14, it just says Highway 14, right? So it doesn't give you all the information. What would happen? Could you get to the destination? Maybe you could
Not well.
not well, right? It's going to be clumsy and clunky. And how are you going to feel about it, right? Is that going to increase stress levels? Is that going to make you happier and relaxed and feeling good? Like, definitely not. So conceptually, this is exactly how your brain works. It is all built on maps. And we start to develop these maps the moment we're born. Right? Mm-hmm. So, kids fall a lot, they bump their head on things, right?
Yes.
They don't
yes,
have this. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You've seen this in action.
Today.
Even happens with adults sometimes, but so if the kids don't have a map yet. They literally don't have a great map of where their head is in space. So we develop this map as we age. Now, what normally happens is as we do age, we stop working on the maps. We stop building the maps. We stick to maps we're very, very familiar with, right? So that we can get from point A to B really, really well. For some people, that's walking, right? So for example, I walk the same route, right? I walk this 2-mile route every morning. I had this routine going, which is great to have a routine going and a habit, but it's the same pattern. It's the same map, right? That I've known for years. And then as you start to age, well, what if all of a sudden your road is closed? You've got to take a different route. What if all of a sudden you have to move in a way, there's ice, right? Or you trip on something and you start to move differently in a way that you don't have a map, right? You don't have a map for it. And then all of a sudden you find yourself falling and injuring yourself, right? So what tends to happen is we lose these maps or we stop working on them and developing them. Right? So this is a big concept, but what I'm going to say here and kind of answer your question, Nicole, is I encourage everybody to choose a movement practice that is new and always changing. Right? So for example, I love the example of dance because dance is incredibly holistic. You learn to move all different parts and pieces of your body. Right? So you hit a lot of different brain areas. There's music involved. There's interactions with other people involved. There's a lot going on there. And dance can be ever changing, right? You can go faster. You can go slower. There's different styles of dance. There's lots of different ways to keep your brain engaged and changing and learning new things all the time. And that type of practice helps to rebuild the maps in the body. So if you've been doing the same kind of routine of movement practice for a long time, you're not going to be rebuilding and recreating new maps, right? So when you have to go across town in a different direction, you might not be able to get there, right? Or not very well.
Or you've, I mean, I would say, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I would, what I'm thinking too with that very specific example of like, travel, how many times do you just like go on autopilot and you end up somewhere that you were planning on going because you just followed that mental map that you'd already built of where you should go based on habit, but the schedule's different, and all of a sudden you're as I told you, Lucas, we recently sold our house, and I left. I had to go down to our PO box downtown, and I started driving, and next thing I knew, I was outside of our old house. I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't right. And I like, oh no, move on. Like I had stopped. I realized it like a block away. I'm like, why am I here? Because that was what I processed.
Yes. Yeah, and I think about I'm thinking it may be helpful for me to give you guys a little bit of a very simple example on this big concept. So in my world, I often start with joints, right? So like a wrist joint or an ankle joint, and to start to build these maps out a little bit. One of the things that's very common in the world is people spraining ankles, right? So you hear about this one quite often. I'm out for a walk. I'm doing my 2-mile routine walk, and I didn't see the stick there, right? And so I stepped on the stick and I rolled my ankle. And at that time, when your ankle rolled over, your brain did not understand the map. It did not know what to do or how to move out of that. And the connective tissues had never gone under that amount of stress and strain. And so an injury maybe occurred, right? So if we back this up a little bit, one of the exercises that I teach people is called an ankle tilt. Really simple. You stand up nice and tall, you take about a half step forward, and you roll your ankle to the side, right? And you have really good control of it. You learn it. You increase movement there over time. Eventually, you can put more weight on it. You can start to move it quickly. And with a little bit of practice with that motion, you can now become that same person who's out on your 2-mile walk. You step on a stick, you roll your ankle, and your brain literally goes, well, that's an ankle tilt. Let's keep going. I've been there, done that. And that type of map building or thinking about how your body operates really ties into resilience. And resilience, I think about like almost like having body armor, right? And if you're walking around with blurred maps, your GPS system isn't working real good, you don't have the best armor if you get outside of your normal path or normal pattern. So working on a specific movement with your ankle and improving the function there and your coordination, that's like adding some armor because you now have more options to move in different ways, and you can become a lot more resilient than you once were, right?
And I have a sidebar here, as you are so shocked about, I'm sure. But our favorite people were asking about movement mobility on Tuesday. And I have 1 second here. I'll pull your screen back up in a moment, but I'm supposed to pull this up right here to share something to show Lucas's movement mobility on the water. Sarah,
how did she get that?
Well, Sarah's very sneaky, but I would say, as I'm looking at this and hearing what you're talking about, I feel like this provides a variety of movement practices. I'm guessing, right? No, maybe.
I think there's some integration there. There's definitely a lot of integration going on. And those are
Sarah feels successful. She's
She does. Well done, Sarah. Well done. I'll give you props for that. That what you just witnessed there was happy, feel good emotions right
yeah.
there. That's what that was. Right. That's fantastic. Yeah, that is really fun. Actually, the coolest thing about that day, spending some time with some wonderful friends behind the boat there for a moment. One of the coolest things about that day was after we returned home, my youngest son said, Dad, there's something different about that. Like you looked better than before when I was when I was wakeboarding there.
Yeah.
He's like, you were better. Like you've improved. And I thought that was so awesome. Now, I think I'm still a relatively young guy of 39. Not like some others that I hang around, but and I'm pretty capable. But what was cool to me about that is I could not have wakeboarded that well 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Not a chance. But as I have personally been working on improving my movement maps, so my brain better understands its orientation, I have better control of my joints and my visual system. I can see things better. I can then learn to do fun things, right? Like wakeboarding behind a boat, right? And then I have to practice obviously wakeboarding, but because I've been working on my movement maps and I have a better understanding of this body that I live in, it opens the door to being able to do things that I think are fun and cool, right? So that I think is actually it should be empowering and provide some hope for people that, hey, if I feel like I can't do anything, if I feel like I'm not good at anything and I'm struggling with motivation, or I can't get out of this mental state that I'm in, I think it should be a little bit hopeful that you can start working on little bits and pieces of your body and learn some new skills. They don't have to be huge skills. That was not my first day on the wakeboard.
It wasn't?
It took time. I know it's crazy. I'm amazing at everything, Nathan. You usually pick it up just like that, but
oh man, I'm the best at being humble. I'm so good at humility.
You are incredibly humble.
That was one of my old roommates. He would be like, "Man, I'm just the best at being humble." It's like I'm so humble. It was all sarcasm, but I don't know. It stuck with me. But, sorry. Yeah, shock. If anyone's watching and thought that was your first day,
no.
they have not wakeboarded. I have fallen on my face far too many times to
Yeah, Sarah didn't post that video. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. I'm sure it might still be coming. I don't know. She's sending me stuff in a Facebook Messenger chat too, so who knows?
Right.
And I think, backing it up a little bit to that first image you shared, I think it's so easy to forget how intimately tied mental and physical health are. And even just you showing this, like those maps, let me pull that back up here. Like those maps, like, the one on the right over there, that's what we get when we aren't focusing on new experiences or new things. And we just get that streamlined thing of where we can do something maybe really well. But as we're thinking about that tie-in with mental and physical health, I know you and I talked about this the other day. There's this stigma around mental health that people don't want to deal with. They don't understand that oftentimes, a change in your physical health and wellness and well-being and the activities you do can have a profound, and does often have a profound effect on your mental state. And I'm speaking from my own experience, but also from others I've worked with and seen. When you're struggling, when you're like depressed or anxious or something, oftentimes it's that change in behavior we see, and oftentimes it's like this sense of lethargy where you just like you step away and you're like not doing, you shut down, you aren't doing anything physical, and you're not eating well. But on the other side of it, it's this like hyperactivity, this like being like, I'm going to do all this stuff, and they're trying to do, but it's a lot of the same activities, but it's repetitive. It's like, I'm going to go and
Yeah,
I'm going to run on the treadmill for I'm going to run 32 miles on the treadmill
yeah,
today.
yeah.
And it's like, and so it's like in those places, it's about toning it back to a healthy level. And so with, with that, I'm wondering from your experience, like obviously I know it's unique between everyone, but and you've kind of talked about some of these things that people can do, but I guess where do you see an optimal, like what does it look like for a person internally when they find that like optimal balance of like well-being, of wellness, like what's like too much versus not enough, and
Mm,
then I mean that's the one that's terribly subjective, and I'm so sorry, um, but also with that, like where do you see, we also talked about this too. So, you know, I say this probably every week. I really think mental health is going to be on the rise because of COVID. I think we're going to see more
yeah,
people in distress, more people who are anxious, more people who are dealing with. I mean, it's constant. It's a state. It's a trauma state. We're in a state of trauma
yeah,
constantly.
yeah.
So, I guess what would you recommend for people to support their mental health, and then also find that what what an example of an optimal wellness state might look like.
Yeah, yeah. I think okay, so there's like multiple questions in there, Nathan. I love it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a
That's
talker.
great. That's
Take one and just
great.
run with it, and I'll repeat the other one.
That's really great. So first of all, I kind of backtrack it. I think optimizing, what does optimized health look like for an individual? I think that is very individually defined. Um, and I think that is 100% okay. For most people, I'll say most people that I have worked with over the last 18-ish years, in the world of movement coaching, is when people recognize that they are happy the majority of the time, they have achieved optimal health. And somewhat as simple as that. Because when you feel good, you feel good, right? When you feel good, things roll a little bit better. You don't get stressed out as much about, problems that arise. You enjoy life a lot more. And so that could be, somebody who's had stomach pains for a long time and their stomach doesn't hurt anymore, so they feel better.
Mhm.
Or, literally they go to the bathroom experience is better, and that can be life changing. Or reducing a pain, or they recognize they're no longer thinking um, about all the potential bad things, right? So they're less fearful day to day, and that feels really, really good. So when there starts to become a shift where people feel better and are happy the majority of the time, that's optimal, and they're there.
That's what I
And
was hoping you would say, because what I I was hoping you would talk about how it's really subjective, because I think a lot of times we see people playing the comparison game. Like why
yes,
why why is my friend that I grew up with, that we did a lot of the same stuff, running like 12 miles and getting up at 4 in the morning to work out, and I'm struggling to get out of bed at 7, and I can't
yeah,
run more, like so.
yeah,
I was hoping you would say that, because I think it's that comparison game that people play. It's this like, well, I'm not living like that, so I must not be well, I must not be in the
yeah.
right place. And then that's that, that comparison is a thief of joy, but it also is a thief of your ability to move forward with your physical and mental wellness.
Yeah, and unfortunately, right now, we live in a world where our fitness and health world, it kind of, it's kind of set up in a way right now where there's a lot of messages out there that say, you know what, you have to look like this to be happy and well, or you have to be able to do this amazing backflip routine that I can do to be happy and well, or you need to be able to lift this amount of weight to be happy and well or fit. There are all these different things out there that kind of carry that message. They kind of carry that message of you have to become this. And once you do, right, which is usually like something crazy cool, it's like superhuman, and like nobody else will ever be able to achieve. but the message is like, once you achieve that, you will find happiness, you will find health, and everything you're looking for in life. And that is unfortunately completely false. And it really misdirects people. And I see it time and time again that it oftentimes leaves people disappointed that they couldn't do X, Y, Z, right? So it's really valuable, like give people permission that you define happiness, you define what feels good. And you don't necessarily have to be a certain weight. You don't have to run a certain speed. You don't have to lift a certain amount of weight. You don't have to. You can find a movement practice that you like and enjoy. And that can be a sport, or that can be crocheting or basket weaving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
underwater basket weaving.
Underwater basket, even better. Yes. And there are things, of course, we should work on our bodies physically and mentally, right? To keep striving towards health. And then to add to that, kind of one of your questions, Nathan, was we also live in a world where a lot of people think that they would prefer to get done with their stressful day, hop on a treadmill, put some headphones on, turn on the TV, put a magazine in front of me, and just hang out there for 30, 60 minutes. But the word I hear a lot is check out, zone out, right? I want to physically zone out. So the path that they think they want to take and they're trying to achieve is disconnecting mental mindfulness and physical movement. They're trying to separate them, right? Because I want to check out. I don't want to think anymore, but I want to move my body physically. And that ultimately, long term, will create more blurry maps. You will find it harder and harder to get around and navigate the world, both physically and emotionally and mentally. So my biggest suggestion with anybody looking for a movement program and a movement practice is to find something that is engaging, right? And that you have to engage into. So again, if I use like dance or martial arts or even like a yoga or a Pilates, or where you're learning new skills, right? You have to learn new skills. You have to pay attention, and you have to learn and engage mentally with your physical body. That is how actually improving the maps of the body.
That's awesome. My wife is a dance teacher, so I've seen it. She's had me like do Zumba, and it was not pretty for anyone, but it was good. It wasn't pretty. We're getting kind of close to time where I want to start kind of winding us back a little bit, but I did have another question, another in all serious one from the.
Can we just be serious for a moment?
In all seriousness, guys, let's just settle in. But I think this ties into that that other question of like what you would recommend for people who are dealing with mental health or distress, or even if it's not you, but how do you Sarah's question is how do you how do you help a friend? What can you recommend? What can you do with them?
Yeah. Sarah, honestly, I like the ideas that you threw out there. So like walking, if somebody's really in a mental funk, really in a funk, right? I think we can all relate to this, different levels of funkiness, right? But if you're really down deep in a funk, it's going to be incredibly hard to dive into a very new skill, right? So if I have never wakeboarded before in my life and I'm in a deep, deep funk, and Sarah, you're like, let's go out on the water and you're going to wakeboard. And my brain is probably at some point going to, give you the middle finger and react in a bad way. I might get frustrated, and then I might feel even more defeated, and it might be really hard to get out of that funk. So I generally suggest when you're in a deep funk and you want to try to help somebody get out of it, pick something that's easy, that's really easy to engage with. Now, walking is the easiest because most everybody knows how to walk. Right? You can walk and get moving without having to think too much, right? Too hard. So that can be the start. For other people, think about what we do with kids. And that is a lot of application to adults as well. So what do we do with kids? We maybe take them outside first off. Outdoors, out in nature, extremely valuable for anybody in a funk. And then maybe we play catch. One of the things that I love to do with all athletes that I work with, no matter what your age or skill level, is we find something we can play catch with. That might be a big beach ball, or it might be a small tennis ball. All right, we're going to play catch. So now we've got your eyes engaged with an activity, moving. Physically, we're moving around. It's a skill that you have to pay attention to, right? Or pick a ball, we're going to kick the ball back and forth, right? But really think about, what do we do with kids? We engage in play, right? In various forms of play. But don't make it too overly complicated. Hopefully that's helpful.
That was really helpful. I don't know about Sarah, but I got a lot out of that. And I was thinking, I had a meeting with someone, gosh, it's been a month back now, but we went out and we decided to toss a Frisbee around. And I felt so dialed in that moment to the conversation.
Yes. Yes. That's another thing that we're kind of taught. Again, I'll say unfortunately, in our fitness and health world, that for some reason, in a lot of ways, as we age, we move around, or we move away from the idea of play. Mm-hmm. You know, we find that it's socially acceptable for kids to play, and we really encourage that. You know, we travel around with our kids playing sports. You know, we love to watch them play sports. You know, we push them into play in different ways, right? Mm-hmm. And then as we age, we get in this mindset of, well, now it's time to work myself to death for a long time, right? But am I allowed, as a 39-year-old, am I allowed to say, can we go play? You know, can we go outside and play? You know, that's, for a lot of circles, that's socially awkward, socially weird, right? Yeah. But if you can embrace that idea of play, and that we should never, ever stop playing, and engage in our brains in play and physical movement, it can be incredibly empowering, like throwing a Frisbee.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And you're right. I mean, it's like, let's go outside and play. It's not something you hear so much in your 30s anymore.
Yeah.
So before we kind of close out our time here, I know you have some things that some resources will pop up here in just a moment, but you know, I like to always end. We talk about serious things. You talked about ways that people can be resilient, talked about ways that people can, you know, engage in the physical well-being process here. But what are some things that, you know, this has been a really, you know, sometimes these are, we have some pretty intense conversations, and I'd say this was intense in a different way of processing something that we think is so separate from our mind, movement. But what are some things that you are hopeful for and like looking forward to? I like to focus our end of our conversations on what's something positive, what's something that we're looking forward to in the world.
Yeah, cool. You know, I think a couple things come to my mind. Is one, I think we're in a time in the world where there are a lot of people that want to feel better and want to produce more happiness, and they're motivated to find it and to make it happen and to band together. So oddly enough, that kind of makes me feel a little bit hopeful. The other thing I think about is we have this crazy cool technology of, you know, the interwebs, right? We're talking to each other here, you know, miles away, and there's so much technology and information on the internet right now. So I encourage people to get out and start searching for things that might interest them, right? I like to say there is something of interest no matter what it is that you think you might be interested in or you're interested in, there are more people like you somewhere on the planet, right? Whether that is like, I come across some just like crazy off the wall things, like we have axe throwing, here in Wisconsin, right? And you've
Yes.
heard about this. Love
Love it.
it. Right? So we have those just crazy different forms of movement and hobbies and activities that with the internet, you can start searching and finding these things, and start having conversations with groups of people that have similar interests. So I really, really suggest that people start searching a little bit more online for things that might interest them. And you might find something like axe throwing, right? Or darts, or who knows what is out there that you think is kind of cool. And usually there's a community behind it, right? Or you can create a community behind it, and you can start engaging with some people. And I think that's a really awesome, availability and resource that we have. We would have never had that option, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right?
Yeah. Darts don't have quite that same satisfying thunk, which is unfortunate. I do like darts.
They really, especially the plastic ones, not so much.
Well, I'm going to toss a couple of resources up here. If you guys want to connect with Lucas and Inside Out Intelligent Training, there's their website. And also, I think you just told me before, if you just went to facebook.com/Inside Out Intelligent Training, you would get to your Facebook page, right?
Yep, correct. Yep.
And then you already gave a shout to, but I'll throw up their website too, zhealtheducation.com/blog, has some resources there as well, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I wanted to throw that up there. There are a lot of physical movement exercises that they put out, everything across the board from migraines to knee pain to, all sorts of things that people are dealing with. So it's just a really good resource to get little quick, tips and tricks.
Yeah, and I think Sarah just asked, is this my time to plug in kindness? Yes, Sarah. Kindness is a great. You plug it in right now, and I'm ready.
Plug it. Charge it up.
I know you sent me some books. So I'm gonna at this moment right now. I've just posted these 3 books that you listed into the comment section, so people can get in those. But do you want to give us a quick rundown of the books that you were looking at here? We had
I'll add on to Sarah's kindness plug too. It's fantastic. I really absolutely love Sarah's and Nicole's message and mission on spreading kindness. And I always loved, I don't know if I've ever told them this, but I love to piggyback on it and say, also carry that forward to being kind to yourself and your own body. And part of that being kind is learning more about it and how to use it. And these are 3 books that came to my mind in just this topic. So the first one is Soft Wired. It is a book that talks about how your brain is a software program and how it operates your body. But there's some stories in there and some really good insight, and it will change the way you start thinking about your brain. But it definitely offers a lot of hope in making changes. And the fact that your brain can change literally will change your entire life. It does not stop developing at any point in time. Right? So even when you are 90 years old, it can actually develop just as fast as a 13-year-old. That's amazing and hopeful, right? The next one is Painful Yarns. Painful Yarns by Mosley is a really easy, quick read. It's a small book. Shares a few stories, but it very specifically talks about pain. And it's going to change your perspective on what pain is and how you consider it and look at it. And when I say pain, I'm not just saying physical pain, I'm also saying emotional pain. So if you're dealing with mental emotional pains or physical pains, it's a good book to put in your toolbox. And then lastly, The Body Has a Mind of Its Own book by Blakesley is a little more in depth on the maps that we talked about. We talked about how your body or your brain develops maps, and some good stories, and it gets a little neuro-y, throw out some big words in that book. But it's really cool to learn about how your brain develops maps, and it even develops maps of, your steering wheel in your car and your shifter and your golf club and things like that. And it maps the world around you, not just your own self, which is pretty neat.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Lucas, I feel like we could have kept talking for a long time because I feel like I feel like there's more things I want to talk about, but just to stay in our time frame, we'll
Yeah.
get it closed down here. But just want to throw out a plug quick. Lost and Found, if you want to connect with us on Instagram or Facebook at Resilient Today. And then our website is resilienttoday.org. Feel free to connect with us. If you're dealing with mental, physical health issues, you want to connect. Reach out. We're here for that, and we can get you plugged into the right place if it's not us. Because we definitely see a lot of what we do is we have great connections like Lucas. We have great connections like Nicole and Sarah, who have been trolling our chat here a little bit, but in the best way, not in a bad way, not a bad troll. Good trolling. I like it. But like we have people that we can get connected with you. And if you want to connect with Lucas, like I said, you can reach him on his website or on his Facebook page. And then next week, we've got another round of Voices of Resilience with Stephanie Clemen, who is going to be talking about her journey and her focus and passion for body image and some of her story, which is very powerful and very exciting. And some of the things that she's doing, I'm excited to be able to share with you all. And then 2 weeks from now, it's our 10-year anniversary as an organization. So at our Voices of Resilience that week will be a pretty cool panel discussion with a lot of folks within our community talking about mental health and well-being. So, and we'll be having a bunch of virtual events throughout the day as well. So you can engage wherever you are, whether you're in, you might be in Australia. I hope that'd be cool. If you're in Australia, hit me up. I want to visit you. But or you could just be right in our backyard here. So make sure to check that out. And yeah, that's all I have for today. And once again, Lucas, thank you so much for taking your time and for sharing your info. And man, I think we'll have to have you back because I feel like we didn't get to half the things we were talking about initially, which is okay.
We got through a lot. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nathan. This was a blast, and I really enjoyed it. And I love your mission that you guys are working on.
Same
Super
with you, Lucas. Same with you. So thank you again. And everyone will be back next week. Next week will be early, 10 a.m. On here, but you can always catch us later. So we'll see you all next week. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks, guys.